at the museum for one of our third Tuesday programs. And a couple of things to say. We always like to express appreciation to Joe and Barbara Reich for allowing the museum to occupy these premises. We're grateful for that. Also, we've had a very active and good committee, one of whom is with us, Ann McDowell and Chris Bohens, and another one, and Curtis Copeland. And they're responsible for getting these going. Also, some of you know are members of the White River Valley Historical Society, of which we're a part, also with the Museum and Research Library in Forsyth. If you're not a member, we of course invite you to join, and there's a form out on the table. We'd be happy to have you fill that out. Also, we have been holding a drawing on a quilt, which you may have seen when you came in. The drawing is today, but there's still time to purchase some drawing tickets if you wish to do so. They're $5 a piece, or $5 for $20. So keep that in mind. Also, you'll notice quite a number of Christmas trees sitting around of various sorts. And Ann McDowell and the Christmas Coalition are responsible for really celebrating. We have more trees, I think, here than any place in town. Thanks to her. Meanwhile, we are privileged today to once again honor the ladies in the service. And we particularly appreciate having Brenda Meadows, who's performed for us before very ably, and Dayle Goldsworthy, who's also been here, and then a new member of the group, Jeanna Kilbane. And so we're going to ask Brenda to start off and telling her who she is and what she does. Well, not everything. You never know about a veteran. Since I'm a veteran.
So he are one.
Well, that's right. I'm a veteran of some 70 odd years, so I understand that. Brenda, it's all yours.
Hi. I'm Brenda Meadows. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and U.S. Army National Guard as well. And this is Jeanna Kilbane. She's an Army veteran. And this is Dayle Goldsworthy, who's Navy veteran.
Hooray!
Yeah, go Navy.
And I just love the idea that they had us back after last year. Was anybody here last year?
Yes.
Was it like a comedy show?
Oh, no. It was fun.
And we've got Jeanna that's going to be even
It'll
funnier.
be even funnier.
So anyway, I guess what we did too, we started out with a format last year where people asked us questions, and don't ask a question if you don't really want to know. That's what I say. But anyway, so, and like I said, Dayle, you introduce yourself. I was in the Army in, well, first I went to Vietnam as a USO entertainer in 1968. And I went there because all the guys I knew got drafted and I couldn't get a date at home. So I figured if I went there I could get a date, and it almost worked. No. And then I joined the Army a couple of years lady in the Women's Army Corps. And I joined a couple years later, and I went to basic training in Anniston, Alabama at Fort McClellan, which is closed now because it was toxic. Thank you, Monsanto and Agent Orange. And then I was stationed permanent party at Fort Ord, California.
I've been there.
And so that's 4 years, 6 months, and 16 days, but who's counting? So Dayle can tell you what she did.
I'm Dayle Goldsworthy. I was in the Navy from 1968 to 1971. Went to boot camp in Bainbridge, Maryland. After that, I was stationed at Naval Air Facility, Washington, D.C., which is part of Andrews Air Force Base. So coming out of boot camp, I wasn't a sailor, I wasn't a seaman, I was an airman. So I worked in air operations at the Naval Air Facility, and we did everything from radioing planes in to meet and greet to doing reservations for people that were officers that came in. We stood duty just like everyone else, and we had duty at our workstation, we had duty at the barracks. I basically lived with the Air Force We had a barracks of 50 Navy women, and it was a World War II barracks. And when you checked into the barracks, the first thing they tell you is, if you hear the fire alarm, get out, because this building will be down to the ground in 3 minutes. So, but the Air Force girls all lived in beautiful brick buildings. But us Navy girls didn't, but we had our meals and everything with the Air Force. So I basically lived with the Air Force for 3 years. And that's the story of my life.
Stick it to it.
You know, some of the things that you might find interesting or unusual about what we did in the military, it was just commonplace to us. So if you have any questions about really what happened or what we did, just ask, because you know, we lived in barracks. We had 2 to a room. I was 68 to 71, so during that time, women weren't allowed on ships. Women weren't allowed to make high rank. Women couldn't be pregnant in the military. It's totally different from what it is today. Women took the place of men in clerical jobs, or maybe a mechanic, or a bus driver, or, you know, truck driver, something like that. But none of us went to war. There was very few that went to Vietnam. We basically, you know, did the menial jobs.
Get the green machine rolling.
Yeah. There was a lot of men that were really angry, you know, that we were coming in to take their jobs and they were going off to war. So we had a little conflict there with, you know, people, you know, you're just here to take our jobs so we can go to war. But in my position, we being on an Air Force base, a lot of people came and went from Vietnam to Andrews or to Naval Air Facility. From Vietnam, air medevacs, a lot of them came in, and we saw a lot. You know, there was a little interesting. I also did a little bit of flying with like a stewardess on a plane. When a group of generals or whatever would come from Vietnam for meetings, they would fly to Chicago or different places, and I would go and serve a little drink or something like that. It wasn't really like a stewardess.
You already had a cute little uniform.
Yeah, I had a cute little uniform. I had a dress uniform, and I wore my dress uniform that you see in the picture. That was my daily uniform. It either came with a wool skirt or wool slacks. I had black, I never wore combat boots. I had either black dress shoes or the tie shoes. They're gidunk shoes. I mean, they're just, they were black tie shoes like your grandmother would wear. And they were the most comfortable. And you could wear them forever, and they would never hurt your feet. And basically, we wore those all the time, whether we had slacks on or our uniform. We had a pinstripe uniform for summer, a 2-piece uniform, which was my favorite. And then we had the wool for the winter. We had dress whites. And I wore my dress whites a lot more than most people did because of where I was, because of the people that were coming and going out of Washington, D.C. But when who was it? President Nixon left, President Johnson came in. President Johnson's, that was 1970, 70?
Yeah, 69.
73.
Yeah, 70, yeah. I was there for then, yeah.
Nixon
I was there for that, and I was wearing dress whites a lot for that period of time. But other than that,
So then basic training, I'm assuming, was very different also at that time?
very basic training was, yes, they taught you really to be a lady.
Interesting.
Makeup
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
When you went to basic training,
It was like
the
flight
things that we had to bring were a girdle, a full
Oh.
slip,
Interesting.
nylons,
Garter.
garter belt. They didn't have pantyhose then. Yeah, we had training on how to be a lady. And we also had drill. That's where those nice shoes came in. And we drilled a lot. And we also learned the history of the Navy and, you know, why ships were named like they are, and different commanders in the past. We didn't learn a lot about women of the past. I don't know, they just didn't talk about women in the military. You know, we were there, and we served our purpose, but they really didn't talk about it a lot. But the things we learned in boot camp, yeah, we were taught to be a lady.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you didn't learn about all the women who flew the planes over to Europe in the Second World War?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't learn a lot about the past women. No. Long after that, I've learned a lot about it, but not while we were in boot camp.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, we had companies of about, we ended up with about 60 or 70 girls. And there's a dropout rate that's very high. If you don't make it the first few weeks, you go home. We graduated, I think, about 30-some, about half of our
Well, what
class.
made you decide to go into the military?
I always wanted to. I come from a military family. My father and his brothers were all in World War II. And I just thought it would be a good idea. And I graduated from high school and went to work. And when I was 21, I went down to the recruiter's office and joined. And my dad wasn't really in favor of it, so he went and signed for me when I was 18. So when I was 21, I went down and enlisted. And best thing I ever did. I
Well,
mean,
was
it's
it a
really-
disappointment to you when you found out what they were teaching you?
No,
Was that what you had an idea you were gonna do?
I had no idea what I was getting into.
Oh.
The Navy's
I know.
different than the Army.
Yeah, and, but it wasn't a bad experience at all. It was a wonderful experience. And going to boot camp, we were also very proud of what we were doing. And when I graduated, my dad was there, my family was there. I was just so proud, of what I had done. And during my time in the service, I was very proud of what I was doing. And one of the biggest regrets is not staying there.
Same here, same here.
Yeah, is not
I've
staying
been a
in.
lifer.
Things changed. I got out in 1971, and it was, 74, 75, everything changed. It was one service, they were training together. Women were part
They
of...
found out women can get pregnant in the military.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could stay in the military then, just 4 years after I was there. But it was so different in the next 4 years after me that everybody became sailors and the uniforms became different and the way they worked were different. The integration of the service was so different.
It wasn't
I think-
smooth.
I think I would have enjoyed that part of it too. I don't know if I'd like it to be on a ship, but the opportunity wasn't there for me when I was younger. But women couldn't even make high rank. You never heard of an admiral or a general in the 60s being a woman, and really a colonel or something like that either. So it was different, but it's a relationship with the girls that you're all together, and I don't know, it was just a camaraderie that was really, it was fun. It was good. It was a lot of
Do you
fun.
feel all the changes were good, or are there some changes that you feel should not have been made?
I think a lot of them are good. I think there's some that shouldn't have been made. I'm not so sure. Maybe part of training should have been integrated, but not all of it. I have a sister that was a drill sergeant, and she went in the 70s, and she's all for all that change, She's about 5'2", and she could get you to stand up right now. She's got a guttural voice that'll just
I bet.
send chills through you. But she just really enjoyed it too. Out of 7 of us in the family, 4 of us went into the military. So it was kind of in the family.
Jeanna, you're kind of new on the block here. Let's hear about you.
Jeanna.
Well, my experience was 180 degrees different from Miss Dale's. I was in the Army from 2002 to 2006.
Oh, yeah.
I went in as an older person. I went in at 29. I turned 30 in AIT, which where you go after
Advanced individual training.
where you learn your actual job. So we were completely co-ed, except our living areas had girl barracks, guy barracks in basic training. But we were unisex. We were, I had male and female drill sergeants. I went to Fort Jackson. Is it South Carolina? Fort Carolina. Fort Jackson. You don't know. You get off the bus and you're like, okay, I'm here now.
Line up.
Yeah, and so I did my basic in Fort Jackson, and I was there 9 weeks, and it was very hot, and we would go run at 4:30 in the morning because you couldn't do it once the sun got up. So you'd be up till 10, 11 at night, and then you got to get up at 4:30 to go run. You do your 10-mile ruck marches with your 50-pound pack and your weapons, and I mean it was completely co-ed. And
You didn't have to bring nylons or garters?
you were told to bring knee highs because one of your dress uniforms was a skirt. I mean, but you had pants and a skirt. But even with your pants, you could have the choice of the tie shoes or like flats.
Yes.
And so you don't want to wear socks with like socks with flats. So I had a pair of knee highs, and actually one of the tricks for people to go on these really long marches is and not get blisters on your feet is to wear hose in between your skin and your sock, so it keeps your feet from rubbing. So even the guys had knee-high socks. Nylons. Yeah, because I want to call everything pantyhose, but pantyhose goes all the way up. So, gentlemen, now you know. If you say knee highs, just your knee, pantyhose go all the way up. So that was an interesting trick. My job was a 91 Juliet, which is medical supply, which sounds really exciting. But I was either in a warehouse or I was in an office. So that was very, very exciting. Stimulating. So what we would do is we would get orders for supplies from, I was during Iraq. So for the Iraqi, for the medical clinics and the hospitals in Iraq, and they would say, hey, we need bandages, we need Band-Aids, we need syringes, we need X, Y, Z. And so they would send the order to our warehouse and we would fill the boxes and then we would ship it. We would ship it downrange. And that's what I did for about a year-esque I was in, where was I? I was in Meadows, Germany, which is part of the Kaiserslautern area. If anybody was stationed in Germany, I was in the Kaiserslautern area for about a year. And then, for a lot of you know who I am from Branson, I was an entertainer here for 20 years. And, then it was like 10 years. And then I went to the Army. They said, oh, you went straight out of high school and then you came here to perform. No. I was here for like 5 years, then went and joined the Army, and then came back and did shows again. So in the Army, it's different now, but they had a contest called the All Army Stars of Tomorrow contest. And they had different categories: male and female vocalists, instrumentalists, dance, variety, whatever. And they would have regional competitions all over wherever the Army had a base. And so I competed in the European regional one because the Germany's so small that it wasn't that big of a contest. So they brought people from Belgium, they brought people from Korea, they brought, and we all competed in basically the European, maybe not from Korea, but that's later. But there was about 9 of us in each category competing for this competition. So I won Best Female Vocalist for Europe. And so then all the winners from all the regions went to Washington, D.C., and we competed again for the All Army Stars of Tomorrow contest, and I won.
Yes.
And thank you. So officially on paper, I'm the 2003 Female Vocalist of the Year for the entire Army, which looks really good on paper. Hasn't done a darn thing, but it looks good on paper. It's like winning an Oscar. It doesn't really, you just say Oscar winner, Jeanna Kilbane, you know, female vocalist of the year, Jeanna Kilbane. It doesn't really do anything. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Well, while I was doing the German competition, the recruiters for the U.S. Army band, the USARA band and chorus, the U.S. Army Europe band and chorus, they were there recruiting members. And so they came up to me and they said, hey, you know, do you want to be part of this chorus? It's a 2-year assignment, and basically all you do is sing and dance all day. And I said, yes. And I had tried out for, I don't know if you've ever heard of the soldier show, the U.S. Army soldier show, which is it's like the U.S. Station version of what we do in Europe. And I auditioned for it. They wanted me. My unit wouldn't let me go because they thought we were on warning orders. Just warning orders. Just rumors of warning orders. We may get deployed. And they said, no, we wouldn't let you go. And so the recruiters told me, they said, hey, we want you to come. I said, they're not going to let me go because Soldier Show wanted me and they wouldn't let me go. They said, no. You're attached to B.B. Bell, the commanding general of U.S. Army Europe. You don't say no to BB. And I'm all, bam! So I walked in with my little orders because I had traveled to the German competition, and I walked into my commander's office and went, bam! And they're all, no, you can't go. And I'm all, oh yeah, look who signed it. They're, oh, BB Bell himself. Oh. So they let me go, and I was attached to the U.S. Army Europe band and chorus for 2 years. I was their choreographer and one of their featured vocalists. And we had about 25 to 30 members, men and women. We had a 5-piece band, and we were attached to the U.S. Army Europe marching band. And so we would have combined concerts in the spring and at Christmas, and we would perform, you know, all over Europe. And what the chorus did, and what chorus with our combo did, is we would go and we would perform at German festivals and parties and military events to foster German and American friendship. So we would go, and Germans like to party. They will have a festival. They're all, it's Tuesday! And you would think it's New Year's Eve. We performed at a pear festival, which I think was the biggest party I've ever been to. No, the biggest party we did was in Eastern Germany because the wall had come down, but they're 10, 15 years behind technology, cultural, everything. And so they're a lot more less economically stable than West Germany. And they had a party to dedicate a new streetcar. And they had all
Sounds like Sparky.
Yeah, and they had all the local celebrities, and it was this huge party, and they had the streetcar, and it was going to be baptized by fire, and so they had the streetcar on the tracks, and they had these sparklers that were going over, and they had to go through the sparklers, and all the celebrities were on the thing, and it was this huge thing. And they had the big movie screens, and you could see the streetcar go. It was the hugest party I've ever been to in my life, and so we were there. It was fantastic.
That's tough duty.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so my experience was I told you it was a lot different. So, you know, we're there, a lot of local bands were there, but we were the only Americans invited, and so they're like, you know, you're a real person, you know, and that was a good time. I don't know why I went there.
Well, now that when you came back from that, when you separated from the Army, were you still doing the band thing, or did you go back to any of your other stuff, or did you come out
Yeah, well, what had happened was
ETS down?
I was about a year and a half in, and I was married at the time, and he was diagnosed with leukemia, and so we were, you know, everything just stops then, and so we were transferred from Germany to Walter Reed in DC. And so luckily I was a medical MOS, so that's how I got out of the chorus. And they put me in an office right there at the hospital, and so he would go for treatment every day, and then I would so we just rode in the car together, and then he would be at the doctor's all day, or he'd be in the hospital for a while, and then I would just work in my office. And what I did there was, if the doctors need the really big ticket items where you have to use the Army budget, you know, if they need a examining table or some kind of machinery, you know, something that costs the thousands and thousands of dollars, they have to get it approved through the military budget. And so they would send it to us, and we would put it in the computer and send it to wherever, and then they would get their new examining table. And yeah, so he made it. He went through 2 years of treatment, and he made it. But that's how I got out of Germany and did my last year in DC, and then I ETS'd and came home, went straight back to shows. And that's my story.
Yeah, and see, that's kind of interesting, is I'm twixt and twain, it's fun I'm in the middle. But I enlisted in 1972, so you were getting out about the time I was going in, and I was there when I was in the Women's Army Corps. Green and gold, Women's Army Corps, our colors bold forevermore. Women's Army Corps, and it was like in 1973 when they incorporated into regular Army and got rid of the Women's Army Corps, which I think was a big mistake. I loved the Women's Army Corps. I agree with her. There are some good things about the transition, but see, I was in the Medical Corps, I was in the Women's Army Corps, and I was in the regular Army all at one time. So that means I had CQ 3 times a month. CQ is charge of quarters, meaning for 24 hours I had to have duty someplace for 24 hours in a barracks. Well, I had the barracks where I lived, but thank the Lord, the sergeant let me live off post. But you said there was 2 to a room in your barracks.
We had 2 to a room.
Oh, the lowest number we had was 6 to a room.
Yeah.
So little
Should've
princess,
joined the Navy.
little princess over here. So,
I had an apartment.
We had better
I did
food.
later.
We had better food in the Army too.
But anyway, so here I was, you know, the transition. Now, here's something interesting about the transition. They started barracks as co-ed. 1 floor would be women's, 1 floor would be men's. But just before that, you could not have a man anywhere in a barracks except in the day room on the bottom floor, right? So I can't tell you how many times I saw young men jump from the windows when they heard that somebody, that change of court, CQ was going to do examine the rooms. And but anyway, once they did have the co-ed, that was kind of interesting. It was almost like you take a bull that's been locked up for a long time and let him loose. And so it was like girls and guys all over, many pregnancies. So that's why I said that about getting pregnant. But in that time, I worked on the psych ward. But when
Sure you
it was really interesting when I went for my testing. They wanted, first I tried Air Force, which I really wanted the Air Force because I liked the uniforms. But when I tested, they wanted to put me in as a mechanic. And I'm going, what? And they said, you tested very high as a mechanic. And I go, I did? You mean there's a screwdriver and something else here? So, but only thing I deducted from that was I used to help my dad when he was working on the car, and he'd say, hand me this so I can do this, hand me this so I can do that. But I said, nay, thank you very much. And so, in the meantime, the Army made it so you could choose what you wanted to do. And so I went to the Army. I wanted to be a psychiatric technician. I wanted to work on a psych ward. I lived in one at home, so I figured I might as well be in some area that was familiar to me. So anyway, I went in, and first I had to train as a medic. And I trained fully as a medic. Was supposed to only be part-time, but there was a schooling situation where there was more time, so they let us go through. So I had my MOS was as a medic and as a psych tech. And then one thing about basic training, though, going at Anniston, Alabama, it was very interesting, and it was kind of rough. It wasn't as, I said we did bring nylons and stuff, we did, but that was like, we wore them once, and that was at graduation. But we, you know, we had fatigues, we had all that stuff, we marched, we had to fall and crawl out of the onions, and we went on bivouac, all that stuff. But it wasn't like it is now. I mean, we still had to do those things, but it wasn't as tough as it was. We had to run PT, we had to do all that. But we did have classes in makeup. We did have classes on certain things about how to be a lady. And we did have a history class on the Army, but they didn't talk about women in the Army. They didn't give, the history was all about the men in the Army that served, da-da-da-da-da. So, but anyway, so I was stationed at Fort Ord in the psychiatric ward, and it was very interesting because I had been a singer. I traveled and sang for many years, and then after I was in Vietnam as USO entertainer for 6 months, came back, I became a Christian, and then for some reason I felt like the Lord was leading me to be in the military. And I thought, well, I got a date when I went to Nam, maybe I can get one. No. So I just kind of watched it and waited to see what I was supposed to do. Well, here I was working on this psychiatric ward, and they started withdrawing troops from Vietnam, and many of them would come through our ward, and they would not talk to the doctors, but they would talk to me. So now you see what the plan was, you know. And so it worked out really well. Met my husband there, and not on the psych ward, but in the Army. And
Sure.
he should be,
I know your husband.
he should be on the psych ward now after living with me 45 years. But, and we had our first child in the Army hospital. And then later I joined the National Guard. Funny thing, when I turned 40, because 38 is the cutoff date, but because I had time in service before, a friend of mine, my sister's brother-in-law's brother, was a general. So he got me in, and I trained as a photojournalist. And that's where I learned how to be an editor, newspaper writer, and that's what I'm doing now. So the training in the Army is superb, don't you think? The military, I mean, when I was training, it was like, da-da, you had so many hours you had to do it, and I mean, you had to get it done or you stayed back. They made you stay back if you didn't pass the test. But I liked it. It was challenging to me. I liked the challenge. But one thing, coming to, well, I was an editor in California, and it came down to, when it came down to Veterans Day and Memorial Day, I noticed that the people who went to the graves and the ones who were there acknowledging were usually the veterans. So I wrote a wonderful little editorial, an opinion page about what's wrong with you, you know, what's wrong with you folks? And then after that, more people started coming because I shamed them into it. But it's here in Branson, coming here, one of the reasons I did come here, and my husband too, was because of the welcoming and warmth toward veterans. I'd never really intended to become the chairperson for the Branson Veterans Task Force. I was railroaded into that one. But it works, you know. And so how many of you here are veterans? I know.
Husbands were.
And that's another thing. I go places to get the veterans discount. They go, was your husband in the military?
I hate that.
I do too.
I know, yeah. We all get that. I go,
Yeah.
I don't even ask for one anymore because they're all, you're not a veteran.
well, you know what you ought to
Shut
do.
up.
You know what you ought to do?
I need a hat.
Yeah. You know what you ought to do? You ought to give him your idea. You said, this was before, I was a guy before I was this.
Let them deal with that.
Oh, is that a dare?
And you would do it.
I would do it.
I would do it too, yeah. But if there's any questions any of you have, we're all, as you can tell, just real shy.
Gina,
I wanted to talk to,
Gina, in your entertaining, were you in uniform or some kind of costuming?
Mostly, a lot of the times we were in, we had dress blues, and so if it was a military event, a change of command, a military ball or something like that, we were in full dress blues, which was so uncomfortable because we were basically a show choir. So we had choreography, we danced together, we're doing, not the most comfortable thing in a full-on dress uniform. But if we're out doing the festivals or anything, we had khaki pants and a polo shirt that said with our what is it?
Company?
With like our company, it's like with our logo, our patch on it. It was so attractive. But or sometimes we would even wear our desert. We had desert fatigue, so we had we had before they went to the computer. You know,
Zigzags.
the computer generated camouflage we had. What was when it went from the green fatigues to the tan fatigues, but it still looked like regular camo. We had that, and so we would wear that sometimes, depending on. Yeah.
How much time do we have, sir?
Oh, what are you doing?
Oh,
Rest of the
great.
afternoon?
Oh, great watch. How many?
No rush. No, you've got a half hour.
Okay. Oh, see, good. See, we talk fast.
What about questions?
You were gonna show us?
Oh, I wanted to show you this. And this is something, this is the Women's Memorial. It's called Winslow Women in Military Service to America. And it's for, it's a memorial to women veterans. It's in Washington, D.C. It's at the ceremonial entrance to Arlington Cemetery. It's just turned 25 years old. And it's not just a statue or, you know, an empty place. It has women that were in the military register. There's a register there. You can go and look up different people. It's all interactive. They have
A museum part.
there's a museum part. There's a store to buy military things. A gift shop. They have different exhibits. They feature different women that have done different amazing things in the military. It was started by General Wilma Vaught, who, when she was in the military, in her early years, couldn't become a high-ranking officer and ended up a brigadier general. And she's been to Branson a couple of times. We've had her here, and we really enjoy her. But each year too, during Veterans Week, we do a women's luncheon and rose petal ceremony, and it's open to the public. You don't have to be a women veteran. I'd love to have more people come and just honor the women veterans. But we have a luncheon. Jeanna was our entertainment this year. We drop petals in a bowl of water in honor of those that have passed before us. We talk about the achievements and where we've come from and how far we've come. We have a guest speaker every year, and I would just love more people to enjoy it and be part of Veterans Week.
That's on November 9th, by the way.
Yeah,
Always
ours
November
is
9th.
always November 9th. And we have about 100 women veterans that come every year. And they come from all over the country, if they're here for a visit or whatever. They come from all over the country. We have a lot of women veterans in Branson,
We do. Many people have moved
in this
here.
area. A lot of people have moved here. But our guest speaker this year,
She was great.
tell them about our colonel.
Well, she served in many facets, but really high up places, and she's retired now. But one thing that she and her husband have is now a camp for the kids of those who have fallen or have been wounded, and it's just about an hour and a half from here. So she and her husband, her husband was a warrant officer, and they've got this great camp. And she came and talked about the changes from Women's Army Corps till now. And one thing you can do now is cuss. And and she proved it. But I mean, there's just different areas, and she was wonderful. But you know, going back to WMSA,
Yeah.
I went on the honor flight about 3 or 4 years ago, and there had never been another woman on the honor flight out of Springfield, right? So I get there, and I'm Vietnam, right? And there's a lady there who's World War II, and there's a lady there who's a Korean War veteran. And so the first time there's a woman on there, there's 3 wars, 3 women representing the women in the military. And so we're on the bus, and we're going around, and I'm saying, well, when do we get to go look at the women's memorial? He goes, well, if we have time, we'll stop by there.
I think,
Guys, on the bus, will we have time to stop by the Women's Memorial? Yes, and we did. And so it was wonderful. And what was really neat about it was the lady, World War II vet, her family knew she was coming, and it's a good thing we went because they had made arrangements, and you can do this, and you can do this, and I can do this. Our family can do this. If you know that you're going there, they will put your name, picture, and time and service and what you did up on this screen. It was amazing. And what a neat lady she was too. So here we were, 3 women vets on the first honor flight with women vets. And I thought it was just a miracle. And the other cool thing, I got to meet Bob Dole. He was sitting out front of the World War II Museum, and they had him in a type of higher wheelchair, and he was sitting there, and I didn't know he was there, and there was a bunch of people talking to him, and there were young people in suits and stuff who were poli-sci majors in college, and so they were talking to him, and I just, oh, there's Bob Dole. And so as they finished, I went up to him, I said, could I have my picture taken with you? He goes, yeah, get over here closer to me. And he puts his arm around me, and he goes, I go, okay. And so I said, you know, smile, and he's just saying things to me. And so then I go, wow. I said, obviously, when he had been put there in that place, the sun was not shining on him, but at this point it was. And I go, wow. I said, aren't you hot? He goes, well, it wasn't till you got here. And somebody pointed out to me on the plane on the return trip that he was the first person to ever do a Viagra commercial.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
So I was like,
I remember that.
anyway, I just thought that was ironic.
The other thing about the memorial is it's all funded by donations.
Yes.
There's, although it's a U.S. government memorial, there's no funding from the government.
Well, they did funding for only like the first 10 years or
Yeah.
whatever it was, and then dropped off
Dropped
funding.
all funding, so now it's only funded by donations. So every year at our Rose Petal luncheon, we take up a collection, and we send the money to the memorial. And that's done all around the country. They have different women gatherings, women veterans gatherings, and they take a collection and they donate. But there's a lot of endowments and whatever, you know, that keeps it alive.
And you guys can help if you want to. See, as you all know, after you turn 25, things start to change. This is 25 years old and things have started to change, so we need to keep it up.
Yeah, we need to keep the funding coming. But I just thought you'd all like to know that we do have our own memorial. And we work
That
very,
is
very
good.
hard.
Good to know, and I didn't know that the Rose Petal deal was open to the public.
Yes.
It's open to
And
the
you know,
public.
there are so many organizations around the country where behind the scenes, the donations are coming, and like College of the Ozarks,
Yeah.
all the wonderful things we're connected with them
Absolutely.
that are being done for our veterans.
Mhm. We have the Branson High School has an all-women's ROTC
Oh,
color guard.
Oh, my
Really?
And they come to our Rose Petal, so we make it all about women.
Wonderful.
And yes, they come.
They did a really good job.
Yeah.
They
And they mingle amongst the women and they talk to the women that have been in the military. Because their future might be in the military and they need to know about it. But from the beginning, I was a wave when I went into the Navy.
I wondered.
I was a wave. She was a whack when she first went in.
Still am.
I got out as a wave, and then afterwards, they all became sailors.
Mhm.
So the waves were no
And
longer.
then we were soldiers.
Yeah.
I'm soldier.
And I haven't heard any of you comment about the food you ate while you were in this.
I ate good. Air Force has wonderful food.
Yes, Air Force has very good food.
Yes.
Yeah, Air Force does have good food.
Yep.
Had I known better, I probably would have joined the Air Force. Air Force has better bases.
And you wouldn't have had to wear knee highs either.
No, they told us that we would say, so why are the Air Force bases so much better than Army bases? They said, well, the Army spends all their money on weapons and training and everything, and the Air Force spends all their money on food and soldier satisfaction. It's like, well, I got gypped, man, but.
I was just going to say that I was a National Guard brat, and my dad was a 35-year veteran of the National Guard. And about the same time you were down in Fort McClellan for boot camp, my dad was stationed down there at Chemical, Nuclear, Biological School. And we flew down there and spent about a week in guest housing on post. So I remember Fort McClellan, and I remember it was a very nice post compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah, well, they still had the World War II stuff going on there.
Yeah.
You know, we liked the rustic.
Yeah, well, it was pretty rustic.
Well, interesting about Fort McClellan, they did shut it down in 1999 because Monsanto had created Agent Orange there, and it was toxic. So the APA shut it down. Many people who have gone through there have been diagnosed with cancers and other maladies. I among them, and had to go through a stem cell transplant almost 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
A total bone marrow thing. I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is common around those type of toxins. And also if you were in transportation, that's another one that's very high in those things. But I could not get disability through that because Fort McClellan is not on the list of of places that were so toxic that people, even though thousands of people came down with it, they don't have it on the list. However, I cannot complain at all about the treatment I've gotten through the VA. It has been wonderful. My doctor is amazing. And I spent 2 months in San Antonio going through the stem cell transplant and all that. And I just have to say, those folks were really good. I know some people run across in some places where whoever's running the place is not doing a good job. But over here at Branson Clinic, they are wonderful. And then, and the folks in Little Rock are really dedicated as well. And one thing I'll have to tell you, Monsanto settled $1 billion lawsuit with the residents of Anniston, Alabama, and there was a clause in that that stated anybody who was ever stationed at Fort McClellan does not qualify for this. So,
Wow.
So all of you write your congressman and tell them Brenda needs her
Disability. Are
disability.
you registered with the VA?
Like for medical?
Yeah, I mean, have you got a VA card?
No.
Do it, girl.
No, I went to this clinic once. They said they wouldn't see me because I went through my service completely intact. I was not ever sick in Army. I wasn't ever injured in the Army. All I wanted to do was go and get allergy medicine. You know, that's all I wanted, and they wouldn't see me. My husband, I was still married at the time. I had better benefits as the spouse of a disabled veteran because he got medically discharged because he had leukemia. I was higher up on the totem pole as a spouse than I was as a veteran. So my VA experience is not pleasant.
But that was one time you need to go over it and just get your card and fill out the paperwork. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.
Yeah. Any other questions back there?
That Agent Orange, when you were talking about that came back on a lot of the equipment. I was in from '71 until 2009,
Yep.
and in the '70s, we were getting a lot of the 10-engine stuff back from, and in the early '80s, 10-engine vehicles back from Vietnam.
That's
We
yeah.
had some Agent Orange exposure in our units.
Yes.
Just from secondary, not like secondary smoke only.
Well, yeah, because that Agent Orange is, it's a devil's tool, and so Monsanto's his son. Sorry about that. Yeah.
What would you do to encourage young people to enlist? Or say, what would you say, I guess?
Go ahead.
I would say, make sure you know what you want to do in life. When you go in, don't just let them give you a job. Make sure when you enlist, you go in there with something in mind and don't back down. They're going to make you a tank driver, they're going to make you a truck driver, they're going to make you all the positions that they can't fill. But make sure that when you go across that line and decide that you're going to enlist in the military, make sure you have a goal in mind. And they will actually do that. Our grandson, my husband's retired military, and we talked to him about that, and we told him he needed to have a goal, he needed to do something. And he went in and they wanted to make him a truck driver, and he said, nope, my grandfather said that if I can't get what I want, then I need to go home. So they redid it, and they had him enlist for 6 years in avionics. He's 24 years old. He's out of the military after 6 years, and he's making $35 an hour as an avionics mechanic on helicopters. So do something that you want to do in life and do it through the military.
That's about what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you know any girls want dates, it's a good way to do it. No, I really loved it. I loved the training. The training is really, really good. But basic training can be really difficult. I mean, I trained sort of before I left physically. The recruiter and I got to be good friends, and she told me all the exercises and everything that they did, and I was ready to go when I went, but I wasn't quite ready for my drill sergeant.
I was too busy being pretty, so I didn't have to run.
Yeah, or sweat.
Well, pin a rose in your nose and call you a black.
Now, when I was in boot camp, one of the activities that I had to put on boxing gloves and box. Did you have to do that?
No, heavens no.
Only with words.
We did it with pugil sticks. I had pugil stick training one day. I got hit upside the head one time, and I said, "Thank you very much. That's enough for me." And you know, because we just did it one day. I mean, we were people that had the MOSs that I was with. We were all going to be administrative or logistics, or so we were not infantry. We were not, we were not the likelihood of any of us being to the front. Nowadays, if you're anywhere, you're in the front line. But they still thought that, oh, you're in logistics. You're gonna be way in the back. You're not ever going to see any action. So I had one day of fight training, and yeah. So it wasn't boxing gloves. It was pugil sticks.
You still had the possibility of going to the front line though, even though you were singing in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went Christmas of 2003. We went to Iraq to perform for the troops. We did 8 bases in 10 days, and we were up at the front. We had to go into the shelters a couple of times. We had military escorts everywhere we went. We didn't drive from base to base. We were flown in Black Hawk helicopters with armed guards, and so I mean, when you're over there, it's like, yeah, you're singing tonight, but in the meantime,
Carry this M16.
yeah, you got your M16
yeah,
and your ammo, and it's like you'll be a singer later, but in between you're you could be attacked at any time in a convoy. That was when the convoy attacks were happening a lot.
Yeah.
When I was in basic training, you had the option of taking weapon training.
I wish I had the option.
But now that I was so weapon phobic, because when I was in Vietnam, all the stuff I saw that was going on, and people carrying all their weapons, and one time I was in a truck and a guy said, "Would you hold this for me?" And I'm like, but so I was just real phobic about that. But I would do it if I had it to do over. I would have taken weapons training, because I'm pretty good now that I had LASIK.
Any more questions?
Jeanna, what made you decide to go so late?
Well, sad to say, it was burnout. I'd been here 4 years. I'd been doing 3 shows a day, 6 days a week, 11 months out of the year, because this was mid-90s, before the economy flopped, when Branson was still in the boom. And I did that 4 years, and the company I worked for was they were not really good people. And it was just burnout. And my husband had been in, and he'd gotten out, and he wasn't really adapting very well to being a civilian. And so he said, what, I'm thinking about going back in. He'd been a Marine. And once you ETS from the Marines, they won't let you go back in. And so he thought, well, the Army will take me. And so I went, well, I'll go too. And he said, no, Jeanna, you'll hate it. You'll hate it. Come as a spouse, get a regular job. You'll hate it. And I'm all, oh yeah, don't tell me what to do. So basically, I joined out of burnout and spite. So I'm glad I did it. I really needed it. I needed the discipline. I needed I needed to
That's
grow
what it
up
is.
some.
Self-discipline is what I
need
need
to,
to do.
so I almost wish in a lot of circumstances that we would go to a system like they have in Europe where once you hit 18, you have to go for a year and a half.
Israel does.
Yeah, a lot of and I think we would have a lot less, entitlement, discipline problems with the younger generation if they just sent them to boot camp.
And patriotism would go way up.
Yeah, I'm back of, I'm not really too hip on the draft, but I think, I wish we could have had, mandatory, obviously, if you've got physical problems or whatever, but I think it should be mandatory.
I agree, like in
other
Israel,
things you
2
could do.
years.
Yeah.
You gotta do.
Germany,
You have to do 2
a
years.
lot of Europeans.
And look at, there's people in Israel, the young people, this generation, they're much more with it, and they also have much more respect for what's going on, and they also are really patriotic, toward their country. You don't hear about there are some, always some, because we've all got unhealed hurts, unmet needs, and unresolved issues, but you don't hear about a bunch of them doing stuff that, I just think I think we should, I agree, even if at least nothing else, basic training.
But the United States has never drafted a woman. Women have never been drafted. Every woman that's gone into the military has volunteered.
Volunteered.
So, be proud of that. For the ones that went in.
Yeah,
And we're only like 2% of the military right now.
Yep.
So,
that's the problem.
You tell them, Brenda.
if we had a bigger percentage in the military, it'd be running a little bit better. Andre's back there.
Yeah, he is.
Hi, Andre!
And Deborah's going to see her husband. Thank you for coming.
Any other questions?
I think we're talked out
Okay.
for at least 5
Really, I
minutes.
can't believe
For at
it.
least 5 minutes.
Well, we're really most appreciative. It's very entertaining, as well as informative. Meanwhile, we do have this beautiful quilt. We're gonna have a drawing.
You ought to ask if anybody wants to buy tickets right now. You could raise some more money.
Yes.
Look at her, you do that. Well, I was watching you.
Vanna White.
Do I have, that's pretty.
Our own
How much
Vanna
are
White.
tickets?
Yeah, how much
How
are
much
they?
are tickets?
Tickets
I
are $5 each or 5 for 20.
Hey,
$5 each or 5 for 20.
I want some tickets.
Okay, Sue's gonna go get some.
This has an interesting story to it too.
Where's the money go?
Museum.
Museum.
So they can have women
Totally,
veterans come back.
All the money goes to the museum.
But there is tell them about that. It's
Yes, this
interesting.
was, the top was done by a person no longer with us anonymously, and then the local quilt club at the senior center quilted it and put the back on. But it's a totally handcrafted Ozark quilt. And it's almost, I think, a little bigger than king size.
Figure I drew
So
my
you have
number
some
and
tickets?
going, so you know.
You can tell I do this kind of thing often. About getting money from people for
Yes.
stuff. Tickets,
That's the other thing about the women's luncheon during Veterans Week. Women veterans are free for lunch. So we
That's good.
raise the money. Yeah, we raise the money to have women veterans for free for lunch. So,
have you ever had a woman veteran for lunch?
We're tasty. Put some barbecue sauce.
we need to lock her up.
I need some coffee. I need some coffee.
I need some
Veterans
coffee.
Week took a lot out of her.
Name and phone number.
Are you the